Welcome to DreamDust Expo 2022 and our panel talk. Let's talk about studios. We are not currently in front of a live studio audience, so we're going to pretend that they're there. We're going to pretend that people are asking questions and we're going to answer them. Um, or hopefully, our guests will be able to be with us in the chat when this is aired so that we can have some live conversation during our event. Okay, so first I have to ask you both to introduce yourselves. I know who you are, but quite a few people in the community don't. So Kenya, can you start, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hi, live studio audience. My name is Kenya Mattis. I founded I founded a storytelling company called Listen Me Caribbean, and a big part of the reason why I'm excited about this conversation is I think that studios in the Caribbean as an up and coming bubbling thing have a very exciting future. And I'm excited to work with both of you guys on this call actually. So yeah, I'm here to represent Listen Me and to talk about this up and coming industry that we have here.
Okay, Renee, your turn.
Hey to the entire DreamDust community. I'm excited to be here. I mean, I think this is one of the few, if only, community-driven like animation things in the Caribbean. So it's really exciting to actually be here, and it feels good because it's not like from any kind of big organization. It's grassroots. It's real kind of grassroots. So I'm really glad to be a part of this. So my name is Renee Holder. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and I would have started animation studio, God, about 12 years ago. That long ago. And yeah, I mean, I'm just excited about the industry as a whole. I mean, I've been kind of championing it from Trinidad, and I think the Caribbean as a whole has a lot to offer the industry. And yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of excited to be a part of it and keep going. I guess it's been 12 years, so let's hope for 12 more.
Like what got you guys into animation though? Like what made you decide this is the industry I'm going to make a business in this region, like this drawing thing? Why did you guys decide on animation for your business venture?
I could go for this. Because migrating was expensive. That's part of the reason. But another part of the reason actually was like, I guess 12 years prior, I was mostly in advertising and marketing. And then the UTT actually had, this is the University of Trinidad and Tobago, they had their first like diploma in animation. So I was like, yeah, I've always wanted to kind of be in animation. I've always been interested in animation. I think my dad actually has a story of the first anime career in Trinidad where they had like an open forum, and I was like probably 12 at the time, 13 at the time, and they had an open forum, and I spoke up at that forum. I was asking questions like, why aren't there much schools? What industry you think? And blah blah blah. I was 12, but I was speaking up at this forum at the first anime career, and my dad always tells me that story because it's like he's thinking that was the first time he actually saw how much passion I had for animation. And so yeah, I've always kind of been interested in animation, and because of my marketing background and because of the UTT, the animation at the time, funny enough, me and my partner actually didn't graduate from the diploma. There was a maths class that we just said fuck it. Sorry, can I curse? I curse a lot, by the way.
Oh no!
I should,
I'm not putting a. I'm not
I'll-
restricting you,
I'll
but
try.
like
I'll try.
pull
I'll
it
try.
back.
I'll try to read it back. Yeah. So let's leave that as one expletive that we're allowed before we get an R rating. So we basically said like that's it. But at that point in time in the industry, there wasn't anywhere else to really go. And because the school was really pushing us back into advertising, we decided, you know what, let's form our own studio, let's do our own thing. We really want to make IP, we really want to make shows, we want to make cartoons. Let's just figure it out. And I think at that point in time, I mean, I was a okay animator. I was a okay illustrator. I know there were a lot more talented people than I was, and at that point in time, I kind of decided, you know what, I need to focus on understanding the business of animation, and that's where I kind of started to focus on. I guess it's been 12 years since, just being focused on the business side of the industry as opposed to like the practical doing side of the industry. So yeah, that's basically me.
Okay. Kenya, how'd you end up here?
Um, so growing up, I loved cartoons and commercials. I would watch cartoons for the 3 to 5 minutes that they were on, and then I would watch not the shows but the ads that would come between the shows, and those I could recite by heart. I had no idea that I would grow up making both, because what I studied wasn't animation or illustration, although I've been surrounded by artists all my life. I actually studied marketing, and so I went to school to get an MBA in marketing. And when I left that university and I was working as a marketing manager, in the background, I had always been making music. So my studio background was actually like I've been to recording studios and music studios, but not an animation studio at all. And so when I started listening, we started as it was registered as an audiobook production company. And so we thought that we are going to be doing storytelling, which was really our passion, myself and Icon. Storytelling using, recording or audio as a medium or sound design as a medium. And we still do that to this day. But what we ended up doing was layering on top of that also, visual storytelling. So we started by doing a graphic novel, which then ended up being a motion graphic or motion comic, and also doing that for customers by making ads and commercials, and in applying that same process that we would use in, let's say, the music or the recording studio. It turns out that the principles are the same. In terms of pre-production, you need to start with a script, start with a story. You need to, of course, understand what the pipeline is going to be and how you're going to go about producing the end product that you want, and then how to master, finish, and to deliver at the end of the day. So I ended up sort of applying my background in recording or in sound design and in writing and in marketing to then evolve what we started by responding to not just the needs of what people wanted us to do, but also just our passion. And our love for storytelling sort of gradually drifted us here. If I had ever started with the idea of, oh, I want to start an animation studio, I would never have gotten here. So I sort of drifted in this direction, rather than set out to officially, conquer the territory or the terrain of
Yeah,
animation.
that sounds like wisdom. Nobody should just jump into this thing like, ha, I'm going to start an animation studio in this
It wasn't a
country,
thing. So I would
in
never
this
have
region.
thought of that being a thing to do here at the time.
No,
That
but
wasn't a
even
thing, to do.
no, but even if somebody had said Kenya Renee start an animation studio and you guys had looked it up, how like just scoped out what like your market would be like, what the environment would be like, what you'd be up against. Like wisdom would tell you just do something else. Like start a toilet paper company or something. Like everybody needs toilet paper.
I used to work for a toilet paper company, actually. So Kimberly Clark was a company I worked for straight out of college. I was doing marketing for them. And so that made sense. This was not the sensible thing to do after doing an MBA, but here I am.
So I mean, here's the funny thing. Like, I mean, I know you're saying like, if I had sense, you probably wouldn't have started with an animation studio. But the truth is, like, I think I always had this naive sense that it could happen. I remember, well, I mean, apart from like the first anime creep or whatever, there was a group of guys. They're friends of mine now, but at the point in time, they were just like, artists you look up to within your sphere. And we had like a local newspaper, and we had a thing called Vox. Give me 1 minute, sorry.
Actually, I just wanted to point out that although we sort of have drifted in the animation space. At the core of everything that we still do is storytelling. So it's not that we've not been doing other things as well. We're now in the process of, producing a podcast series, working with partners to produce podcasts. We have done books, we have done other types of stories. And so for me, the medium I'm agnostic to the medium because the principles are the same in terms of the five spaces of how to get to the finished product, starting with the idea or the IP, going into, or I should say the strategy. You're going to need the idea or the IP. You're going to need production. You're going to need financing. You're going to need sales and distribution. You're going to need marketing. And so applying those principles to whatever. The process is different, yes, but the principles applied to them are actually pretty similar.
No,
and
that's not what I meant. I meant that the process of animation can be really tedious, particularly if you are new to it and you don't know, and it's just stressful. Like I myself, if I've gone through a particular experience, I assess afterward. I'm like, not doing that again, and then I just move on. You have options. You could have done anything else. You could have just said, this animation thing, it's as far as I'll go on it, it's just graphic novels and nothing further, and just like build your business doing everything else that you could have done, because you had like other toolboxes. I mean, tools in your toolbox, so you didn't have to do the animation thing. But then like I, having seen the inside of Listen Me, having been part of Listen Me, you were surrounded by artists, so I'm not sure that like they wouldn't have bullied you into it anyway.
That's what I say. I kind of was drifted. I was a salmon, sort of, not swimming upstream, but I was a fish being drifted in the sea, in the stream of artists who kind of, and I believed in them. I believed in you guys, and so it's hard for me to be surrounded by the amazing talent that we have and to not think, well, how can we empower us to actually accomplish, or empower ourselves to accomplish our dreams? And I never felt like it was impossible. And seeing the talent up close, I was always able to think of, okay, well, what are the gaps that we're currently facing, and how can my role be to sort of fill those gaps so that you guys can, do what you do best.
That's exactly the same way I feel as well, because it's like, I mean, you see just talents around you, and you know that there's just this huge gap in terms of the actual understanding of what it actually takes to get from, well, we have raw talents and we have all this talent and expertise and all these other things, but there are so many gaps, especially within our region, to get them to where they need to get to. And I mean, Kenya could attest to this. Like, the knowledge isn't just freely out there. It's kind of one of those things where, especially on a production or producer role, like there's no clear cut. There's no school to go to learn how to be a producer. There's no school to look how to find financing. There's no school you learn to do it. So it's kind of a trial by error kind of situation. And I mean, I kind of feel like Kenya in the same way. It's like you kind of see the people that have the talent, and you just want to be like, hey, well, I realize that this is your core, this is your belief, this is what you're good at. How can I help to assist to make sure that you get there? Because I mean, I don't know if I love the business side of it, or maybe I've fooled myself into believing over all these years that I love it. Yeah, of course I love it, I enjoy it, but I realize that this is a role that I have to fulfill in the
it's one of those gaps
fair of things. Yeah, that just doesn't exist. So I guess might as well fill it. Yeah.
Do you remember what you were saying about like people, artists that you had looked up to at the time but are now your friends?
Oh yeah.
No,
yeah. Like the same guys I was telling you about, like during my, I guess, teens, early 20s, there was a local newspaper, and a bunch of, like, I guess if I was in my 20s, they're probably like mid 20s, early 30s. They actually, like, I don't know how, but they managed to convince the newspaper to create like a completely youth-focused magazine that they had complete oversight over. It came out every Sunday, and they did like comics and stories on folklore and a bunch of cool things. And I remember being exposed to that, seeing these guys and seeing what they're doing, and was like, well, and I guess something clicked in my brain, and I was like, well, if they could do this locally, maybe I could do it as well. And it just clicked in me then, and I guess ever since then I've kind of been. I mean, they're my friends now. Like, I think to some extent they look up to me. I mean, I don't want to say that, but I mean, I'm pretty sure there's like they look at me as more of as a partner to them, because to some extent, because like some of their stuff, I don't think they realize the kind of impact that they had on me. And sometimes I think about that too, that maybe some of the things that we're doing as well, we don't know the kind of impact we're having on people that we maybe not have any connection to. And just the mere fact that we're doing it gives the idea that maybe there is opportunity here to be followed. And maybe if we don't,
can be done.
yeah, if maybe we may not be the ones to figure it out, but maybe the next generation might figure it out if we're able to lay the correct roadmaps and groundwork for them. So yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend who says that you should be weird out loud so that other weirdos can find you. And like I'm
love
a
that.
strong believer in that. Like if you're going to do something and you want to do it well and you want it to work for you where you are, you might as well do it out loud. You might find some help, someone might catch up with you. I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Trying. So why did you well, I asked you how you ended up doing the studio. So I guess I also got your answers about why you did it. But like, do you like as a studio, as a business, do you feel the need to push Caribbean representation while you're doing your pitches? Like coming up, well, when the government took interest in pushing animation in Jamaica, there was like so much talk about try to be Jamaican, try to be local, yada 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 yada, and then you kind of buy into that, but then you start getting into being good, like you start getting into studying and practicing and like working on your craft, and you're just like, I can either get good or I can focus on telling like my local stories. Like I can't do both at the same time. Not like it will not ever happen, but like right me personally right now I have to be like I have to focus on becoming a good storyteller so that when I start telling my local stories, they are well told and they're not just like overlooked. The hype isn't just that oh it's a Jamaican story or it's a Trinidadian. It's just that I want it to be a good story,
Story.
and then like the Trini stuff, the Caribbean stuff is just gravy on the top. So do you guys feel the need to push Caribbean representation while you're pitching to other people or while you're talking to clients about their work or whatever?
For us, I will say it's been in the Listen Me DNA from day one to tell our stories. It's what drives us. It's been our passion. We do work with people who have their own stories to tell, and in doing so, whether or not they're our stories, it helps us in the process to get better at what we do. And for every project that we take on, we try and see, well, how can we make it better than the last one? How can this help us grow? And how can we better represent the message or the story that they want to tell? And this is whether it's a motion graphic or motion comic for an NGO, or whether this is a podcast for an educational company or anything at all that we do. It's really about how can we be the best, how can we do the best service that we can to the story that needs to be told. In doing so, alongside that, we try to exercise our muscle in telling our own stories as well. And if we have an opportunity to do so, like the other day when we did the project with Giphy, we had free reign to tell whatever stories we wanted to tell. So of course we're going to go with our competitive advantage with this, which is telling the stories that only we know how to tell. So we can do that, even if our quality, and I'm not saying that the quality wasn't great, it was actually really good, but even if we're skimping on quality in terms of the type of animation, one thing that we can do better than anyone else is tell our own stories. And so that authenticity, I think, is a part of quality that is I definitely don't overlook. And so people can be very forgiving of the quality sometimes if the story that you're telling is unique and it is powerful. I say that to say that oftentimes when you look at how shows evolve, the first season or even the pilot is not the same as season 12. You know, the team is growing as they're evolving as well, and they're learning with that journey. Um, but what we need to really hone from day one, and this is where I think we stand from, is listen, we have a story to tell. Let us work on pruning and refining how to tell that story. And if the mode or the finish or the polish of that story evolves over time, then the audience will grow with us. And taking that kind of approach, we can start where we are. If you wait until it's perfect, then chances are the stars will never align. But if you start putting things out there and start kind of showing how you can, your intent, then you attract the kind of partnerships and the resources that you need to then help you grow along the way. And I firmly think that that is even how the project with, with Lovers Leap came about, the recent trailer that we had done, where we were able at the time, for instance, I know that we're great at pre-production, we are great at, design and emotive storytelling. But then combining that with someone who's like, listen, we know that this is a first time for us, but we want to tell this story for the very first time. We're like, okay, well, how can we learn and grow along the way until we get to the point where we can now do a full 20-minute short film for this project. So yeah, I definitely think that it is, and I see it more as an iterative process than consecutive process in terms of I'll tell yours, then I tell mine. I think that we kind of grow and evolve simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean, can I just say ditto? But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of saying like, I think there's this idea that we can't tell local stories on an international level because it's not people won't get it if it's Jamaican, if it's Trinidadian. But I mean, stories are stories. Like I remember I was reading this article recently about just I think we take for granted sometimes how unique the Caribbean is. I mean, we take a step back and kind of be like, well, the Caribbean was colonized by all of these people, blah blah blah. We really have a thing, and sometimes we treat the Caribbean. Well, this might be my personal gripe, but we treat the Caribbean as a diaspora of other places and not a cultural landscape of its own. So sometimes we kind of treat the Caribbean as an African diaspora, an Indian diaspora. But I mean, this might be Trinidad and primarily my story because again, like I might come across. Well, I don't know if you have a red man in Jamaica, but yeah, well, I'm a typical red man in Trinidad, right? So, but what that really means is that my mom, my parents are Indian, well, traditional Carib, and my dad is traditional Carib and African, and my mom is Spanish, Venezuelan, and Chinese. I grew up with my grandmother's spiritual Baptist, Catholic mass, going to Indian pujas on weekends and that kind of thing because my family is also East Indian. Like that was me growing up, and I was exposed to all of these different cultures just being in Trinidad. So sometimes when people talk about just Trinidad or the Caribbean being as this one kind of hub and hook, this kind of binary idea of it's an African diaspora or Indian diaspora. Like to me, that's not my experience as being a Caribbean person. It's a mixture of all of these things. And I come back to the article I was talking about, is like they were talking about how us being colonized by all these other places, to some extent, the Caribbean represents the true diversity of the world. Or what the diversity of the world is trying to be right now, And I kind of look at that in terms of our storytelling as well, and it's always going to be a part of the kind of stories that we tell, and the DNA of our stories, because it's always going to come from a unique perspective. It's always going to come from a unique perspective to the rest of the world, and I think, to be honest with you, like the world is kind of now catching up to the idea of diversity when we've been doing this all this time. And at least that's how I feel.
I remember I was on a particular social media platform last year, they refer to it as a hell site. And there was a particular question like, why doesn't this is specific to Jamaica, why doesn't Jamaica have this particular industry, basically a storytelling industry? Why can't our local artists make these amazing things? And there were like lots of irritated responses to that original question, which I totally understood and were all very justified. But there was this one answer that was, the Caribbean doesn't have the enough eyes for us to make our own show and it to be profitable. Like, we'll watch it and we'll
Yeah.
probably have like a demographic of like the diaspora in well, the Jamaican, the Trinidadian diaspora in America, in Canada, in London. We probably have those diasporas tuning in, but we just don't have enough people to support a show. I'm just like, what does that mean for animation though? Because if you go to markets like Mipcom or Kids Screen, and you're like, ooh, we're all about diversity and we want to see more diverse content. What kind of stories can you tell us? I'm just like, what? When we tell you, let's say we make a Trini show, we make a Jamaican show, and you at the company like it. What happens when you like release it to the world and it's not really hitting? What if it doesn't hit all the eyes? What if it doesn't ping off the screen that it really needs to show on,
So,
to keep the show going,
I mean,
because it's so Caribbean?
this house art, the show that we're currently developing right now, the cricket show. So the main cast is very diverse, because it's honestly it's just the people I grew up around. Let me be honest, like, but that's the main comment that people are saying, like, oh wow, the characters are so diverse. And I'm like, but this is just people in my neighborhood. Like, it's not a big of a deal. But I to take to your point, like, there is a lot of talk internationally about we want to see diversity, but the truth is, like, and this might be my truth. I mean, we could have the discussion about it, which might even take up a lot more discussion than this. But the idea that they have a diversity is still very binary, and it's usually honestly driven by the Black American experience or the Black American idea of what diversity is, especially in media. And that's just because America tends to take up a lot of the media air when it comes to pitching, creating content, and that kind of thing. So if it's not squarely, if it doesn't fit in within the Black idea of an American experience, then it's very hard to sell a project. We're currently developing a project with a Canadian partner, and a lot of the LA people was telling them, oh, you should move their show is basically like about a kid, an immigrant kid from the Caribbean. His family is in Canada, and they bring him up, and he has like mental issues. But he has a mental issue, but he has trouble fitting in, and he gets family, and it's a typical kind of immigrant story moving into a bigger city, very much so. But he was telling me before, like, he was talking to some guys from LA, and the guys were like, "Oh, you know what? This show might sell if you move it to like inner city New York as opposed to like Caribbean Toronto." And I'm like, why? What is it about the what is it that all of a sudden that makes it more palatable? And it's because the idea of diversity is still this very binary thing and this very Black American experience thing.
I
And
think
if it
it's
doesn't
just
fit into that
American.
mold,
I'm not sure if it's just Black American, or if it's just generally American. Because
well,
media
yeah,
is like very American centric,
yeah,
because like that's just their greatest export probably. Um,
yeah, it is.
so
The
I
only export, let's be
I
honest.
I don't think it's like surprising that their view of everything is very American centric, and then there's the black people and then there's the white people. So I just think that like they have an awareness of their own situation and less so of others. I'm not sure if it's like a black American
Yeah.
specifically expectation of what diversity is, as opposed to just an American perspective. of what diversity is?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the reasons why. Well, I mean, that's kind of the reason why we primarily are doing a lot of stuff within the European markets as well, because the American market unto itself, and Kenya can attest to this as well too, is like it's just unique. It's unique in its difficulty. Trying to break into the American market, I don't understand it. It's just difficult. It's this own unique thing. While I mean, again, like the European market, the African market, it just seems a lot more embracing of unique things, unique stories. But then again, everybody's also trying to move into America as well too. So there's always that.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting space because when we talk about market, we're really talking about the communities and the audiences that we want to watch our shows. It's not necessarily the networks or the other, all the other persons in between us and the viewer. But the fact of the matter is that they are a big part of how the show gets made. So I don't know that. I mean, there's so many up and coming shows now that because of platforms like YouTube, if you have money, for instance, with Lupita Nyong'o and basically being the executive producer of her show, which is very firmly Kenyan in its identity, and its personality. Once it gets an audience on a ubiquitous platform like YouTube, then it's easy for you to then break into wherever else because you have the numbers to show for it. And so I think that for me, the structure of how diverse projects are made or will be made in the future, it's going to be a bit different because once you have individuals who have that kind of resource that can invest, because animation is of course an expensive venture, that can invest in projects and that can sort of circumvent the traditional means of distribution initially, prove and build your audience and your market, and then sort of have it end up on those platforms. I think that's really where that shift in the type of shows that we're gonna see taking place. And I mean, we already see it on social media platforms. Like some of the biggest names or influencers that we know, they're not American, and they are diverse, and that's because they speak to the majority of people around the world on a platform that is not dominated by a few gatekeepers, and so I just think that the idea of us representing our culture or being true to our culture, yes, to speak to your point, Janelle, the Caribbean market, as the number of people that's living in the Caribbean is terribly small, and so it's a very easy thing to say that, well, the market isn't big enough. You know what I mean? That's like to me it's like a cheap way out. But if your content is representative enough of a particular experience that almost anyone anywhere can relate to, and I think it was someone I had just seen was like, the more specific he found that he made his content is the more relatable it became. Then we'll start to see that once we are able to partner with people who are independent and who are diverse and who are championing and who are doing their own studios, then this kind of content is going to be a lot more prevalent.
So
to shift the narrative.
So like when you go to the markets, as I mentioned before, I'm on main road, guys, so trucks and buses will sound like they're passing through my bedroom. So when you go to these
It's a crow. That's a live atmospheric audience I wanted.
So like when you're at MIPCOM and like Kids Screen, what has been the reaction to the stuff that the IP that you've presented so far?
Love and fear.
Love and fear?
Love and fear. They love it and they're afraid that it's too daring or it's too different.
Oh.
So they want somebody to take a bet on it first.
Yeah. That's in a nutshell. Like they love it, they love the diversity, they love the stories, they love the art, they love all of these things. But they wanna bet on a short bet, to be honest with you. They don't want to be the first people to take your risk, to take the chance.
So what has your
And again, it's always kind of they're always trying to fit it into, I guess, what has been done, as opposed to taking
And
a
by
risk on
doing
something
that,
new.
they change the very thing that makes it unique, and so you end
Yeah.
up going down into the development process with with a show that's very different from what you had originally conceptualized.
so what's your response to that?
You have either two ways to go about it. One, you can the more credibility that you build as a studio, and the more eyeballs you have on your project, is the greater the chance that you will have more creative control over your future projects. So sometimes you can just do something initially that will accomplish a goal of getting your name behind an actual project that's it ticks all the boxes, and then after you've done that, then you can afford yourself and your team the chance to take more experimental risks, if you will. Or you can just say, yo, I'm just gonna go it on my own, renegade it, we're gonna just go guerrilla. That takes some time. Rejecting deals, turning down offers. One thing that I've experienced in this journey is it has definitely changed my appreciation of time. I had no idea it was gonna take this long. I legit thought that we could do. I didn't know it would take this long to get to where we are today. I thought this would have taken 5 years tops. Here I am, 9 years in, and we're just now getting to a place where we're like, I can see what we've wanted to accomplish happening. We're just now working on the types of productions that we've dreamed of from day one. So if you want to sprint ahead versus if you really want to go the painstaking roads, the road of bootstrapping, and like basically going the hard way and being true to what you want to, versus if it's even the road of what other studios do, which is stay alive or to feed the cow, as one studio owner had told me from Spain. Just continue taking jobs, grow as a production outfit, and work on other people's projects. And don't take the risk on your own shows, because you getting chance that you probably have to do. I think someone had actually said, I think she did 200 pitches before she had to pitch the show that got through 200 times. So can you survive 200 pitches is really you have to weigh those odds based on where you are. And not many of us have 200 pitches in us. If you pitch 5 times and them say, "Jano star," say, you know what I mean? Like, is it worth it? And is this really what I want to do? You get a proper job that it pays the bills, it's 9 to 5, and it makes sense. Proper job, you know what I mean? So the riskiness of that path is definitely there, especially in this creative field where it has so much to do with taste and people's opinions, and it's just this it's like it's not very easy to nail down and say, okay, well, here's a product, here's a functional benefits, and here's how we're going to push it. So to answer the question of what to do, you have to make a judgment call. You either go and feed yourself and your studio and you figure out ways to do that creatively, or you decide that you're going to still go through with the project that you want, but you might take a much longer time to get there.
I remember, I can't remember who said this to me, but it's seared into my brain. If you want to create cartoons, if you want to create your own IP, the worst thing you could ever do is start a studio.
Start a studio. I got that very same advice. If you want to make IP, do not start a studio.
I can't remember. It was probably
the same person told us.
Exactly. It was exactly. But
it's
literally said in my brain.
The same person might have told me.
This is somebody in an advanced market. This is somebody who is not in like a struggling, space that we are.
The worst thing you can do is start a studio, because it's kind of two competing ideas. I mean, starting a studio means that you have to keep the studio running while doing this other thing, while you're just making IP, while you're just focusing on you and your project and that kind of thing. We've kind of, I guess, me and Kenya decided to take the hard route, but it is a bit of that. I mean, to me, I always kind of look at it and kind of weigh the options when kind of pitching projects and kind of seeing what deals come. It's kind of a situation that's like, well, I'm okay to change some things as long as it doesn't change the core tenets of the story. And I guess that when it comes to us developing stories as well too, it's kind of like figuring out what that key thing is that is kind of below the surface. It's like if you're peeling back an onion, like the core. And I feel sometimes like as long as the core doesn't change, I'm okay. Like, I mean, how's that? The core of how's that? It's really and truly just about colonialism. Like that's let's be frank, that's what it is.
Isn't
It's
everything from the
purely
Caribbean about colonialism?
colonialism.
If you tell a story, if you dig deep enough, you'll find that slavery and colonialism is the root of all things here.
Yeah, but it's colonialism, it's cricket, it's sports, it's that indomitable Caribbeanness of belief. So like as long as it doesn't change, like you can change the character name to whatever you want to, as long as that isn't lost. Like I'm okay with that because I it's one of those things where I feel like. But I guess this kind of goes back to like the whole idea of storytelling and that kind of thing. And Caribbean stories is you can watch certain things that have maybe no real connection to a Caribbean thing, but you feel there's a Caribbeanness there. Like I watched Encanto, and I think I saw some random like plant that only grows in our region, and I was like, oh, that had one random prop in the background somewhere triggered something in me where I was like, oh, that was actually kind of cool to see something that is visually represented the Caribbean. And while it's not Caribbean, like you can see pieces of ourselves in these other things. So, I mean, it's kind of like finding what those things are and making sure you hold on to those things tight, no matter the story. And I mean, it's kind of a check and balances in terms of figuring out what you're willing to give up to get what you want at the end of the day. And I feel sometimes when we're also from the Caribbean, we feel as though we only have one chance. Like, this is the only opportunity, that is never going to be any other opportunity, so I need to take what I can get. But that's not true. As long as you keep pushing, more opportunities will come. And it's kind of weighing, like, does this opportunity lead me to the next one, lead me to the next one, lead me to the next one? And it's kind of weighing the long-term gain versus the short-term, I guess, returns of it.
I don't know if this has been your experience, Renee, but I almost feel as if there's a bit of a question mark as to let's see how long they'll last. So if it is that you're in this game for like a year or two, then okay, you just start. You haven't been really tested or tried or and proven yourself. But if you say that you've been doing this for 9 years, 10 years, 11 years, and there is a bit of staying power that you have. It shows that you have navigated some of those risks before. You have been able to find that balance or find a balance. It almost increases the ability of of yourself to be trusted with more. You know what I mean?
Regardless of whatever you say about like skills, talents, ability, it's people, it's relationships. All of this entire business is founded on people and relationships, and relationships take time to build. Trust takes time to build. Exactly. Those things take time, and I mean, I remember having a conversation with like my parents because they were like, oh, you should go back to school and study and that kind of thing. And I was like, well, technically, like me going to markets and me spending all this money to go to markets and all this other thing, that's my school. That's my university. Like that's what it is. And it's kind of also important for Caribbean studios as well to kind of get out there, because people need to see us out there, and people need to see us out there.
Not just once.
Not just once every 3 years, like at least every year coming back, doing these things, having this. Because people when people see you over a period of time, is that level of trust just becomes
increases.
Yeah, and then people kind of say, oh yeah, you were here for the market last year, and and who knows? You might not work with them that year or the next year, but all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, we were working on this thing, and we might be like a Jamaican, background, or it might be interesting to kind of get Kenya's opinion on this and see if we can, because again, they're also coming from these, a UK person I'm looking at right now, they say they're old, pale, and stale. He literally said this, by the way. But I mean, he's a whole white man with a production studio. So like, if he said it, I'm like, okay, cool. but I mean, I ever so often I consult with him because it's like he wants to create more diverse content, but he knows that he's not the right person to kind of pilot through these projects. So I mean, as if you kind of position yourselves in these ways as that person, then
Yeah.
yeah, I mean these opportunities will come because it just doesn't exist in these markets. Like that actual perspective just doesn't exist.
What I really appreciate about the government's push here to like get animation to be a thing in the country is that since it's so new and it's so small that it's hard to find anybody who is in animation, right? So whoever they find, they'll just grab onto them and say, "You go to MIPCOM this year. You go to Anime Caribbean this year. You go to Kids Screen." And so like these random people who are not going to start studios, they're artists. They'll be a part of a crew in a studio. They end up in these markets and like they end up being in these talks and meeting people, and they have more of a sense of like the business of things. And I think that's been like great education, even if like it's not being used the way that maybe the government had intended for it to be used. Like it's influencing your thought process somehow, some way. It's probably telling you how to make your pitches so that you say that you're an animator and you want to pitch a show to Kenya, you have like the business savvy or at least the knowledge to know what she will be looking for in this
Right.
pitch. So like that really helps. I don't know if that's still happening. I haven't heard about it in a while, but just like random folks being thrown into France for NSC, they come back with like links. I've known people that got jobs, people who made better pitches just from like being in those places, even if they were unprepared to be there. So that's one. So
Like
that's one good thing.
I would say, I mean, again, I've been the studio itself has been 12 years, but honestly, I have learned more stuff in the past 2 years than the 12 years of being, and that's just because of the show we're developing House at is kind of in a actual development phase with a broadcaster and with other international studios and that kind of thing because it's going through this like I guess all the things I would have read about and thought that I knew over the 12 years is actually being put into work in the past 2 years. And so like I could say for myself like just being what we've been going through the past 2 years, like uh, we're operating at a completely different level, just in terms of talent and skill, but also just in terms of mindset. And again, it's one of those things that that particular process just it's not known. It's not
There's
somewhere
no
easy
rule book.
accessible. There's no rule book. There's no way to do it. There's no correct way to do it. It's just the way that you're doing it for this particular project. So it's one of those things that unfortunately it's kind of like you need to the only way to do something is to do it.
What's your experience been running the studio though? Like, what are the difficulties that you've experienced and the joys, and what is your judgment in about animation in the Caribbean? Like, after all your experience, like, what do you think about animation in the Caribbean?
And yeah, you want to take that?
The second question first. I, from where I sit, I see animation in the Caribbean not so much as an industry as it is a collective right now. I think it's a collective of very talented people who are at different levels doing different things. And it's possible for us to be a part of productions now because I think there are different groups or pockets of people who have mastered or who have experience in different parts of the process. So we're all sort of touching this elephant and we're all coming at it from different standpoints with our different levels of experience. But animation in the Caribbean, I think it would be amazing for it to get to a space where we are not just conceptualizing, but we're also like working on like some major productions that are homegrown. And I think we're getting there, but we still are at that phase of growth where we need rely on a lot of external help to get it done at the quality and the level that it's possible for us. Or we have a high level of taste, but our level of experience and expertise isn't quite matching up to it. So even when we produce something, at least the persons that I interact with, we know what wicked look like, and we're still figuring out how to get there. And the only way to get there is just through iterations, it's just through experience, just through processes that just have to keep doing it. And even within our studio, the you know with the I use the Giphy product as an example. To me, it's a microcosm of animation in the Caribbean. So here we are, we're commissioned or we're partnering with this global company to work on a series of shorts, and we work on 3 shorts with them. And with each process, each short that we work on, the process gets better and better, faster and faster, to the point where we look at the last one, we're like, yo, if we had started where we ended, this would have been a completely different project. As I see that on a sort of regional level, in terms of quality. And then the second thing, in terms of how we can become more of an industry, I think it is through working together more. And because we're sort of separated, divided by the islands, animation in the Caribbean is a collective of collectives, but we're not sort of at a space where we're all functioning as a cohesive whole. We're getting there, but it's been a long and slow process. And that's a part of my experience so far. Working in animation, as I shared before, I did not know it would have taken this long. And I think that one thing that I have certainly learned is that when I took this decision to work in this space, which was pretty new at the time, my experience has not just been like, I think I have counterparts in other countries where they're just able to kind of just run through and just, follow the beaten path. I've been chopping bush every step of the way to create the path. And hopefully there are others behind me that are kind of coming and have a bit more, ease and comfort in doing the things that I had to kind of just figure out how to do. So my experience has been it's been threefold. It's been learning what I need to do, putting it into practice, and also teaching clients how animation works, teaching the government and our partners how it works, training people so that they can work on projects. The great thing about being at the forefront is that you get to, the exciting challenge of creating first, but the hard or challenging thing about being at the forefront is you have to figure things out, do them, and you have to basically create the environment that you need. It's not just do it one time, but for you to be able to do it repeatedly and do it better and to grow. And on the teaching others part, the hardest part has been teaching potential financial partners locally how the process works and getting them on board. That's always been one of those things that we're all trying to figure out. So that would probably sum up my experience. I will say that the rush I get though from seeing like finished products or seeing even products in process, some of the projects that we're working on now that are in development, just knowing that I can live in a world or create a world where these things can come to life, I feel like that is almost like a purpose-driven part of the work that we do. And so you really have to believe and be passionate in it in order for it to continue. 10 years we're doing this thing, but as Renee said, believe it or not, even over COVID we've developed such great relationships because the world has kind of become closer digitally, that I now feel like I have a better and clearer sense of where we're going, so I can chop bush with a bit more clarity.
Renee, what's your judgment of animation in the Caribbean?
This is why I let Kenya go first because she's much more eloquent than I am.
Let me do all that. You let me chop bush so that you can just come in after me
Exactly,
and just fill in the stream of food. Go ahead.
My thoughts on this is like it's always been one since the beginning that the individual island approach that we've had in terms of just government spending and interest and animation, like that's never gonna be a thing. It's never gonna, unless we take a regional approach to it as an industry across the region. Like it's never gonna be anything other than a collection of collectives of people that are doing these things. I mean, I think communities like this one, like DreamDust, is super important because I think from what I see from you guys, I mean, you guys are kind of building it from the grassroots level and really helping each other out. To be honest with you, I think there. I generally don't know where this comes from, but I think there's such this idea of like talent but individualism in the region. Like we're very much like, yeah, we love working with people and that kind of thing, but then when it comes to, we're very much like we want to focus on our own thing, and we very much like the idea of this one person has succeeded as opposed to the group
You don't know
has
where that comes
succeeded.
from? I know where that comes from. We don't expect greatness. We don't expect good things to happen. So like in Jamaica, we know that we can like work with music. Like people can make a life with music, and we know that we can make a life with track, right? But anything else, anything that is a little bit odd, we're not expecting that a whole group of people be able to make it. One person will go school and get a job abroad and make them life there. So, but like the idea, I remember when I was at listening, every time we got a client or someone heard about us, there's an animation studio in Jamaica. There's a studio in Jamaica. I don't know, make cartoon. Like that was always like the response. So it's not. It's just like a general disbelief that a collective, well, not a collective, but like an established organization of people can make something, can exist and continue to exist, make something, have it be good, and have it match with anything else on like the international market. Also, there's an expectation that if it look good, it's foreign, and obviously if you're in Jamaica or in Trinidad, it can't be foreign. You're here, right? So I don't think it's like we want the individuals to work and not the group. It's just that we don't trust that it can work as a group. I think that's one thing that I've really had to like deal with. Actually, at this point, I'm just like, this is a you problem. We'll figure it out over here, but like when you're ready to change your mind, you can join us. So,
But that's the thing too. Like I think a lot of people, a lot of young people growing up seeing animation and that kind of thing, like they don't realize it's studio of 50, 100 plus people that are collaboratively working together to produce this one thing that you see. We just see at the end of the day the one director standing up and being like, "Oh yes, this was my singular vision" and that kind of thing. But we don't realize that there is an entire team behind them. So it's kind of that idea of what it actually takes to really and truly, as Kenya said, make this into industry. And I mean, I think it's changing. I think COVID has changed the people's willingness to want to work together and collaborate and kind of contribute to the collective whole of this idea. But I think we're still away from that. And I mean, just in terms of my idea of the region on a whole, like my idea of success has changed drastically depending on the year, to be honest with you. Like there was a point in time where I was like, oh yeah, we need to like focus on training and doing training and that kind of stuff. But then it's like I think there's also a part of people when they're training where they don't see my idea of this. Like when you're training is great and fantastic and good, but then when you leave training and you're out in the existing world, there's nowhere to actually apply the skills that you've learned. so you become disheartened and you just do other things. So like there's so many things within the ecosystem that needs to be working together in tandem to really and truly make the industry happen. Like there needs to be training, there needs to be jobs, there needs to be, there needs to be the ability to, if you do create content where you're putting it out there needs to be a way to make money from the content that you're putting it out there. There needs to be investments. There are so many things, and to be honest with you, like we're one person. We can't fix every single pocket of that ecosystem. Like everybody needs to kind of do individual things to make those things work. And I think now where my idea of success is like small wins. It's like really small wins, and trying to make those wins as sustainable and as replicable as possible. Like a small win for me 2 years ago was when we started initially pitching Housat. I got the opportunity to pitch to Netflix. Netflix didn't want it, but they were working on a show for, I think they were working on a movie that had some Caribbean stuff in it, and they were like, oh, well, do you know any Caribbean talents that would be interested to work on it? And I think that's when I reached out to a couple of people from DreamDust. I reached out to Raj and that kind of thing, and I think Raj ended up, I think he's still like the lead storyboard artist for that film at Netflix.
He's lead.
And yeah, so it's like things like that where it's like I kind of reevaluated what success to me really is, and success really is trying to create as much opportunities there as we can for people that are in the industry, because you guys, and I'll be honest, you guys are working your asses off and pushing, and it's just that little break of opportunity that needs to happen for you guys to succeed. And if we can create a bridge to help that while we're doing whatever it is we're doing, then why not? And to me, that my idea of success and success for the region has changed to be more in line with, I guess, try to create as much opportunities as possible for people, and that's where it really is.
You made a comment that like really struck with me, like about when people are trained and then they're released into the world, what kind of jobs do they have? And like that thought has rested on me for like a long time, because I remember when I started animating, I was just like, I'm going to animate, right? I didn't actually, the government hadn't started doing its thing yet, so I was just like, I'm going to animate. And my friend at high school was like, I'm also going to animate, and we just started figuring it out on our own, right? But then when I got out of college and heard like people were leaving University of West Indies from whatever animation course was there, I'm like, what are they doing? I know that Lissimi is there, but Lissimi is a small studio. They can't hire everybody. So what are these students doing? And I know that there are other small productions going on, but though they still can't take care of everybody. So what are they doing? And then I had to think of like, how is this going to work? Like if people can't have a job, they'll have to find some other job to keep the lights on. But then if they're not spending 8 hours a day working on their craft, they're not going to make it. So I'm like, my idea of success recently has been that if 20 years on the news, they're like, why didn't the animation industry work? Why did it fail? I'll be able to go to sleep with a smile on my face, knowing that individuals have been able to build a career wherever they are, whether they're here or they left the country or whatever. I'm just concerned right now. I'm just concerned that they can have a job at all, because it will take a time for the region to have an industry. We don't know how long that will take. We had a studio from South Korea visit us at the studio in the studio at Lissimi, and they were saying that Lissimi then was like them 12 years ago, and
they were yes, at least 15 years ago. That's where. And they're an amazing studio now. What they're saying, where you guys know is where we were 15 years ago.
And we know that South Korea has been doing so many shows for America, so they had to like cut their teeth on other people's productions before they could get to, and they're just starting to make their own stuff, right? And China is just like starting to figure out animation for themselves. It's been going on for decades, and they haven't been able to figure it out. And they're like starting to strike gold now. So I'm like, it's going to take a long time before the region know itself. Like before we know ourselves, it's going to take a very long time. So when that time comes, there still need to be people who have had a career, who have been able to build their lives doing animation elsewhere. So they just need to keep going, basically. So that's
Yeah,
like
but
a
I mean,
smaller
also
win.
also
That's like a bigger win.
yeah, keep in mind though that like and those things don't happen in isolation. So, you know, the studio would have had like, South Korea would have had the government would have had to say, all right, cool, we're going to now the government would have now say, all right, cool, like there's broadcast limitations that are happening in South Korea. So now
It
60%.
created the environment for them to
Yeah.
flourish.
Yeah, 60% of all broadcast TV needs to be local television. So now all your broadcast channels need to be investing into local content. You need to set up tax incentives so that companies can grow. You need to set up proper training. You need like all of these things need to work in tandem to really and truly make the industry work. And while we can say the studios need to these studios buckle down, they'll get it done, but that's not the case. The environment needs to be something that allows us to flourish. And I mean, I could be very disheartened about looking at it, but I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon. At least for Trinidad, I can't say that simply because Trinidad is still very very much as they talk about diversity, they're still very much leaning on oil and gas, and that's always going to be their bread and butter. Creativity and diversity is always going to be a secondhand idea to them. And even if there is an industry push for it, it's not sustainable. So it's kind of figuring out how can we leverage all of these things within your region to make it work.
I remember when I met
My goal for success is that I'm not looking at I'm not trying to create an industry. That's not my job. It's not my goal. I do want to create global opportunities.
Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Not my circus. No, I was gonna say it, but I decided against it. I was like, not my circus, not my monkey. But I do want to create global opportunities.
Yeah.
And whether we are going to be taking advantage of them here or we have to go somewhere else, I do want for there to be a Caribbean infiltration of or creation of global opportunities, and I do want to create sustainable value.
Yep.
Now, the form that value will take, I am not quite certain, because we were on a panel recently with a game developer, a studio owner from Cuba, and that's a very acute example of an environment that does not is not built around the creation or the flourishing of that particular type of business, and so they have to seek opportunities elsewhere, but they'll always try to incorporate the Cuban community into what it is that they do. And so I believe that there are ways to create lasting or sustainable value in what we're doing, and the root or the core of that does come back down to IP development and to comes from the story and creating global opportunities. I think a part of that, it making sure that we can take advantage of those opportunities. A part of that comes from trying to strengthen the creative community of the Caribbean, trying to see how we can build that network, opportunities like working with DreamDust or even having this conversation here. Those are all parts of how we can look at how we can strengthen the creative community so that when those opportunities come, we can create lasting value. That's sort of where I'm looking at it, because I feel that because we are risk averse when it comes to the creative industries in the Caribbean, we do, especially where money is concerned anyway, money needs to see a success story in order for them to decide to put up some cash. And then that's when the government will come through and be like, oh, I see something's happening here. We need to jump in and create an environment so it can happen. We're like, dude, we've been making this happen without you since. But unfortunately, you do have to, it's not like oil and gas, or it's not like bauxite that's already just sitting in the ground waiting to be mined. It's something that we have to create and show in order for the opportunity to become more apparent to everyone else, even if only us in this room can see it.
Okay, so I think we got like all the big questions out, so I'm just going to fire off some smaller questions geared more towards the audience. Hopefully, we cover everything. How do you network? Mostly, the artists that you interact with are all introverts. How do you network as an introvert? Kenya went to MIPCOM the other day and met like super cool people that we got to talk to afterwards, and that was really cool. But like, if Kenya had sent me on her behalf, it wouldn't have happened. So, how do you recommend networking?
And he's gonna go first this time.
Sorry, I got a call between and it does.
Oh,
wait, I think. Can you
okay.
repeat the question?
That's
Repeat the
Renee's
question.
basically,
Oh,
yeah.
I was asking how you guys network, because most artists that I meet are introverts. Even the charismatic ones are introverted. Charismatic, like how, but I was wondering how you guys approach it. I know Kenya is not introverted, but like, I'm not sure about Renee. How would you guys recommend doing it?
I am I am super
You.
introverted.
What do you mean,
Um,
Janelle? Kenya,
I
I've
know
seen
I
you in
know
action.
I am super introverted. It might not seem like that, but I am. Um, I guess the best way to approach this is like I don't even know if there's like proper tips. Like step one, do this. Step two, do that. Um, it's kind of just approach people and realize that people are just people. I guess I don't know. That's the stupidest I guess response you can think of it, but that's what it is. Like, yeah, this guy might be working at Disney, but it's just a guy who has a job. I mean, he could be the same guy who working as a cashier in a supermarket. It's just he just happens to be working at Disney. Like, he's still a person at the end of the day. And I guess that's kind of how I framed it in my mind when usually networking with people is just, and it's always a case of, I think sometimes when it comes to networking, we have this idea that I need to give them something, or or they want something from me, as opposed to just having a conversation and getting to know them as a person before, I guess, offering what you have or offering or finding out what they have. It's just kind of like, hey, like, you like Succession? I like Succession.
You
There
like
is something that we can talk about before we need to talk about these other things.
you
Like,
like Bread and Them
it's
Thing
just
Day? It's
getting
like
to
a
know
really
people on a
popular. The Bread and Them Thing
it's
Day is
just
like
it's
a.
kind of finding what that common ground is before you think of networking as a thing. I think 'cause sometimes we kind of have to we think about networking as a thing as opposed to it's just having a conversation and getting to know people as people.
So learn how to talk to people. Step one, become a person.
Well,
Step one, become a human being. You know, yeah. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, if you're an introvert like me, I guess the one thing that I kind of do is just I research the hell out of people before, and if you're going to a networking event, research the hell out of them, so at least you have an idea of some things that you can talk about if at some point it falls apart, or you can bring up something that they've worked on or they recently tweeted about or something along those lines. So at least for me as an introvert, it kind of puts you at ease. So you're not kind of figuring out things in the moment. You have something to kind of pull on at that point in time. And that's I guess that's a strategy that's a strategy that I kind of use, is that you always kind of like see somebody, you kind of make a plan of who you want to talk to and at least what you want to talk to them about, but don't start off like, oh my god, hi, you're so and so and so and so, like that. No, let's take it down a notch and just approach them like normal people. And you kind of realize that people are just people. I'm sure Kenya does way better job than I am at this. So yeah.
I approach everyone I meet in the same way. First of all, as an introvert, Jenny,
Kenya,
um,
Kenya.
yes, yes, and
You know,
yes.
you know what? Let's not call it this. We're ambiverts, all right? Where
I'm a
we
functional
we take what we
introvert.
get.
Mm,
I'm definitely a functional
you are
introvert in that.
extremely charming, and I don't know, Kenya. That's a little hard to
Thank
believe.
you.
Okay, go for
I so I my preferred mode of interacting with people is on a one-on-one basis. I'm not necessarily one for like huge groups. Whenever I'm at an event or at a function, I like to kind of talk to people one-on-ways and have real meaningful conversations. I'm not really one for like fluff or like, um, small. I don't do small talk very well, to be very honest with you. But what I do have, and this helps me to be able to approach people, is I have a genuine desire to learn from whoever I meet. And I believe that everybody I meet, I can learn something from them. Whether it's a madman on the road, and we can't use that term anymore. But I think in Trinidad, if you call them vagrants, or let's say even if you're homeless, you have a story and you have something that is unique about you that I'm actually fascinated in kind of understanding how people work. And so when I think of people not as like this intimidating like light that I'm afraid to approach, but as an interesting being that I'd like to walk away learning from, then I don't start by pitching me. I actually start by being interested in you. And if I do, especially, taking what Renee had said, and like if I research first just to kind of figure out who these people are, I'm like, this is interesting. How did they do that? And it just so happens that when you talk to people for the first time and you display a genuine interest in them and what they do open up to you. And it's not like a feigned pretend thing for me. I'm asking like, for real, like, how do you do this, or how did that work, or or it might be something that I admire about them. But I try not to make it about myself. I try to really just take in the person I'm talking to and be observant, be respectful, and be interested. And it's hard not to, if I do that and I am myself and I try to start a conversation and it doesn't work, then it's okay. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be shut down for the rest of the function and I go somewhere else. It's very often that somebody else has trying to get my attention and I wasn't able to at the time, and I probably blew them off unknowingly, and the music was loud or whatever. So people have come up to me and said, you're kind of like standoffish or whatever. It's because, dude, I probably was wearing my glasses, because when I take off my glasses, I can't see anybody's faces, so I just feel like it's me alone in the room, right? Being blind has an advantage. And when I have on my glasses, I'm probably just thinking about a specific thing, like I need to get a drink or I need to do whatever. So people in trying to get your attention as an introvert, they don't know you're an introvert or extrovert. They're probably struggling over there to going through the same thought process that you're going through. We're all in this soup, trying to meet interesting people and trying to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. So when I think about it like that, it's easier. I do get intimidated, like, oh my gosh, I went up to Issa Rae one time and I spoke to her, and I swear to you, my mouth was like, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't remember what I was saying. But she was so gracious that over time I was able to have a conversation with her and just tell her, I really admire your work and whatever. And, at least I can say that I was able to recover from that conversation. So one thing is, people are just like you, as Renee had rightfully said, display a genuine interest in persons. Thirdly, it's not always going to be perfect. Get over it. Just recover fast and move on. Don't sulk and dwell in that moment, as we tend to kind of overthink and do. And remember, the person behind you is probably struggling with the same thing that you're struggling with as well.
Yeah, I think that's very much key. Like, let's be honest, animation is full of people like us. So why would you think that all of a sudden that the other people that you're trying to talk to are extroverts and they are so popular? No, they're just as as introverted and awkward and weird and all of these things. They're just like us. So it's like don't think, I guess, don't think too hard about it. Like, it's just finding that commonality, and the more you approach a situation with ease, the more they feel at ease with you as well. It's like, I guess it's like match energy with energy is the best way as best as I can think about it. So that's always good. And there are going to be times where you're going to fumble and fall, but I kind of look at it as my charm. It's like I'm an awkward, weird person, so you said it yourself. Like you put your weirdness out there. Your weirdness you're gonna find your tribe. And if somebody doesn't like your weird energy, then maybe that's good. Maybe that's a good thing. That's someone that's like your energy, because maybe that's not the person that you should be networking with in the first place.
Okay.
If you leave an event or a space and you make one good connection, that's a win. Like, don't think that you have to like conquer the room. You don't have to. You can make one, two connections, and then you kind of build on that over time.
And also, like, don't look at the networking as the end all be all. Like, that's literally just the that's not, I wouldn't say that's not even the appetizer. That's the free glass of water that you get with the meal. That's what the networking is. Like, everything comes afterwards. It's the follow up. It's the next time you see them. It's the phone call afterwards. Like, those are the things that really matter. Like, that initial introduction, like, as long as you walk away, as long as you both walk away with a good experience, that's honestly the best you could ask for. Anything else after that is gravy.
Speaking of networking, do you guys use recruiters, or do you guys interact with recruiters yourselves often?
Sorry,
When you say
I don't.
recruiter, what do you mean?
Okay, so
Oh, okay.
recruiters, as I understand them, are people who find people to get hired. So you have a project,
Right.
and let's say you're missing background designers. You don't know any background designers. You get your recruiter to source those people. However, they may do so. So usually on the internet, sometimes through email conversations, sometimes through social media. So I guess your question answered my question. You guys don't have recruiters. You don't use recruiters. So how do you find people to work with?
DreamDust. Twitter,
It,
Instagram.
okay.
Like that's what it is. Like, so something I tend to like recent as of recently is there is artists in the Caribbean hashtag event that happens every year on Twitter.
I just
I
found
tend
out
to
about
follow.
it.
Yeah, I follow that hashtag definitely. Because I mean, it's good to also see not just the talents within Trinidad or the talent in Jamaica, like what the region has to offer. Because I mean, at least for us, and especially during COVID, like we've kind of changed our model to be more of a Caribbean studio than, I guess, just specifically Trinidad. So like we work with people like in Venezuela and Barbados and other places outside of Trinidad as well too. Um, so I tend to use that, but I mean, I guess our core tenet is just making sure that you are within the region, you are Caribbean, you do have that perspective of a Caribbean perspective. But yeah, I mean, we don't really use recruiters per se, but I guess Twitter Twitter is where really I'm at right now, and so Twitter is kind of where I would tend to find artists, and that particular hashtag is one I kind of look out for every year to find new people, find new artists.
Kenya, how do you find people?
Um, so luckily, I've met people who are good connectors. So even though they're not recruiters officially, they are in the industry and they know people. And so I think that there are different types of persons. There are persons who, introverts are. It's that introverts are basically recruited by extroverts as friends. So they kind of collect us and then pull us out of our houses and bring us to places. But there are people like that in business as well, who through their wherever their spaces are, they've met a lot of people and they're very good connectors. And so connecting with connectors is a very helpful thing. And we have worked with agents as well who are known in the spaces that they occupy in the industry, and then they would know other studios and different parties and partners as well. So I wouldn't say that I've worked with a recruiter, but we have worked with people who are connected and who are connectors, and they
I
connect
mean,
us.
the same way how we're talking about producers not having a role, there not being a role for producers in the Caribbean. Who knows? There might be an opening for a recruiter, a Caribbean recruiter role that, that just doesn't exist right now. That maybe somebody could fulfill.
Okay. What is your process of accepting pitches, if you do?
We don't have a process of accepting pitches just now. We have a process of um, figuring out what makes a pitch good for us, for the pitches that we create. But because we're not at the point where we are looking to produce, large, or let's say a series or a feature film that is sort of being pitched to us, I would say that that's not something that we work on, but we have accepted a pitch for a show that we are doing pre-production work on, because it's really us accepting them as a client. And so they're, a big part. They're financing the project, and we are producing the project. But they're executive producers, and a part of our decision to work on that project is because yes, it was Caribbean, it was cultural. So we look at the theme, we look at the partner. We want to work with somebody who's credible. We want to work with somebody who we can trust. And we look at the type of project to know that, well, is it something that's within our wheelhouse or capacity? And do we have the bandwidth for it? Just to make sure that we can actually take it on at this point in time. So those are some of the things that we look at when we're working on projects that we decide to, or pitches that we decide to produce, but not because, I would say one thing that that I don't think we're going to be doing that for the next 6 months to a year is working on producing like an independent creatives project, like from the ground up. That would definitely require us having a lot of other partners and stakeholders on board, just to ensure that we can see the project through.
Yeah, it's kind of the same for us as well. We don't have a formal like pitching to us process, but it is actually in our roadmap for 2024. And as I'm saying that now, I remember Kenya, like your idea of time suddenly changes working in animation. Like you're doing 5-year strat plans, and like you look at that as like, oh yeah, this makes a lot of complete sense for this. And it's like, oh yeah, that's normal. And I was looking at a strat plan recently.
8 months, that's supposed to can work.
Yeah. No, but like, yeah, so like it is in our roadmap for 2024, because we do want to spend the next year kind of tying up a lot of loose ends in terms of structuring how we do internally our business. Mm-hmm. Because I will admit, like, COVID did change our model completely, and I don't think I have actually taken the time to like look at that new model versus what we had planned, and then kind of squishing the two together to make this new thing. So definitely next year is where I want to kind of coalesce the studio in terms of how we operate as a business. But it is in our roadmap for 2024 in terms of that formalized process. But I say all that to say that, I mean, people have reached out to us and talked about projects. And yeah, I mean, right now we're in development with 2 projects. And I mean, development doesn't mean like, development can literally just be a conversation, and we're talking about the idea and kind of figuring out where can we get the financing to do this if we do decide to take it on. And when it comes to ideas like that, I mean, again, it's kind of one of those things where it needs to speak to us as a studio. It needs to be Caribbean. It needs to have a particular perspective that is Caribbean. Like it was a friend of mine he's a director in Canada, and it was actually a live action show that he wanted to make into animation, and it was about this immigrant kid and that kind of stuff. And even though it's set in Toronto, like I saw there was something I see that could speak to us simply because there is this idea of how do you represent as a Caribbean person in this space that does not really, that is in an environment that doesn't really speak to you. And something about that kind of really spoke to us as a studio, and spoke to me personally as well too. Like, oh yeah, this is something that I could get behind. And same thing for another movie that we recently just was asked to kind of just like help development stuff on. And again, it was literally like taking an old traditional like Shakespeare play, but making it into a movie and setting it, maybe not setting it in the Caribbean, but making the lead a Caribbean immigrant or somebody from the Caribbean. And again, it was just kind of thinking, how do we supplant our ideas, our goals, our Caribbeanness in this new thing, in this new place? So it's those kinds of stories that really and truly kind of appeal to us, where it's it's not the surface of the story. It's kind of like what is really kind of right below it that really actually speaks to who we are as a people, the kind of stories that we want to tell, and kind of I guess really actually navigating what it means to be Caribbean. I guess if that's the best way I could describe it, what it really means to be West Indian, what it really means to be Caribbean. And I think, I'll be honest with you, I mean, I think most of that may come from me personally, simply because I have a problem. Like, anytime I leave Trinidad, I'm Mexican in Miami, or I'm Mexican in Miami. I automatically speak Spanish in Miami. When I go to France, they're kind of unsure where I fit in. Are you like Syrian? Are you kind of thing? Like because I don't know, ethnically ambiguous to some extent. Uh, like that has always kind of been something that is being like, how do you represent yourself as a Caribbean person in these places that doesn't necessarily have an idea of what Caribbean is? And it's not necessarily just an Afro-Caribbean experience. It's not necessarily an Indo-Caribbean experience. It's not necessarily a thing, but it's all of those things. And those are the kind of stories that really attract me. It's like that whole conversation around identity and our identity as a people. Those are the kind of stories that attract me. So I think those are the kind of projects that I tend to be attracted to as well. And I guess I kind of veto certain things within the company as well too, in terms of the kind of projects we do, as long as it kind of fits within that mold as well. So yeah, so I mean, if you have an idea, reach out. I might just, if depending on the idea, I might be like, well, you know, let's have a further conversation, or you know what, it's not really for us, but I'm always open to give advice.
So you guys are not really accepting pitches from artists, but you are accepting pitches from like people who are looking to use your services.
Correct.
So how
Yep,
do you
correct.
how do you approach? Well, I was going to ask how do you guys approach recruiters, but do you? Well, no, you said you don't know what a recruiter is. So how do you approach like your clients or the people that you want to be clients? Like, hey, why don't you hire me? Like, how do you start that conversation?
Um, how do we target partners and customers? Sometimes it is through um, like old emails. Um, I've definitely approached persons that I want to work with in that way, and it tends to be around a specific ask that I have or a specific thing that I have in mind that I think they would be great for. So it's not usually just like, hey, why don't we just work together on a random thing. There is that. I also do meet people from time to time. I would say LinkedIn is a tool, Twitter is a tool. Those spaces are tools to connect with people who you think you would want to work with. Not necessarily just now, but like in the future. Just to like initiate that conversation or initiate a relationship with them and find out what they need. That usually is one of the first things that I do. I try to find out what are they looking for, what are some of the gaps that they think they have, and then I try and figure out, well, are we a good fit for that thing, basically. So my principle for meeting someone in person is very similar to how I approach it online. And thirdly, it has worked out actually that by doing good work, good people find you. That's actually been the main way that we've been getting people, especially over COVID. Like, it was some of the cold emails that we get are from dream customers that we didn't even know wanted to work with us or that exist. Um, and that is from a service perspective as well. Like, even with I go back to the Giphy example. Here's that we've been doing film emoji, Janelle, from Wayne, and we just had this little thing doing where, hey, you're putting up gifts and you're designing them and you're putting them up.
Is that how that
And then
conversation started?
no,
Oh.
Giphy reached out to us because they saw Cam.
Oh, okay.
So we were just doing a thing, we put it up online, they see Cam, they're like, oh, Caribbean Studios doing this kind of thing. It would be cool for us to work together to produce projects, for a platform. I'm like, okay, so by just doing good work, putting it up there, that becomes basically, it's one of the assets that you use in your lead funnel to get people to come to you. And I prefer that way. For me, that's the introvert's way of marketing. It is basically putting your best foot out there and be like, well, this is me, promote it, try and get it, into different spaces. But then through that, oftentimes like-minded people sort of come to you and find you in these different channels.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, I can't disagree with anything that Kenya said. I mean, it's honestly like putting yourself out there, putting your work out there, and I mean, Kenya may be like a set of word like that lead funnel. I mean, maybe a more marketing term than anything else, but it basically just means like having a website, responding to emails, having a email actually available on your website that actually you check ever so often, like just being available to respond to these things and having a good web presence, having a decent social media presence, like all of these things really and truly do make an impact. Because then when somebody does decide to want to look for you, they can't find you. If you don't put your work out there, if you're not accessible, then how can people actually get onto you? And I think sometimes that's the biggest hurdle for a lot of people is just be available. And if you continue to
be available.
Yeah, if you continue to do good work, more good work tends to follow you. I mean, I always look at this might not be our trajectory, but I mean, I know a lot of people on the DreamDust Discord love the line and love the line and all the work that they've done on that kind of thing. But honestly, their trajectory didn't get to where it was until Wesley put out Grand Mighty Baton. Like when Grand Mighty, which was a personal project that they did, when they put it out there, that's when League of Legends start calling. That's when all of these people start calling and that kind of thing. And that was a personal project that really and truly shot the line in terms of where they are right now. And it was Super Ninja Robot, that whole thing. It really comes out. So it's like being able to have this one thing that is really well and really good could be that calling card to bring on these other jobs as well. So yeah, I mean, good work tends to follow good work, and just putting yourself out there and being available and being open to any opportunity that may come your way and weighing those opportunities to say if they're good or bad for you, those are usually the things that help.
For or people who are looking to be employed by you, how do you recommend people create opportunities for them? Well, I guess you just said it. How do you recommend people to create opportunities for themselves to get attention? But you guys just said make good work and make yourself available. So I guess that's the answer, guys.
Visible. And the third thing is involve friction from the process of being able to reach you. So if you're good, you're visible, and there's zero friction in terms of how to reach you, then chances are when the recruiters, aka connectors or agents, are looking for or thinking of people that would be appropriate for a project, then you'll be top of mind, you'll be reachable. And then you'll be suitable for the project. But in terms of like for us, for people, a lot of people that we've worked with end up being persons who, on our website, there's a join our team button, and we have over 80. I think I counted 80 at one point, submissions to that. And sometimes there are projects where we literally just sift through and look at the portfolios and review to see who might be a good fit for the project. So if people are interested in working on projects with us, definitely use that button. It's not just one of those, cobwebbed tabs on a website that doesn't get reviewed. I definitely encourage people to do that. And sometimes it's easier to do it that way than to submit a portfolio one-one, because then to find you and then to figure out where did I see or whatever, it kind of gets lost in the process.
Yeah, it's the same for us as well. So like we do have a careers page that that people can apply. I mean, I will have to double check, but I also think there's an open submission in terms of like if you don't necessarily fit into a particular role that we're looking for at that point in time, you can submit it. But I would say something that I guess that is kind of contrary to what a lot of people do within the region is that we do have a lot of, I guess because of the nature of the industry, quote unquote, the industry, people have to do a lot of things. So an animator needs to animate and do backgrounds and color and do editing and all these other things. So sometimes when when you're submitting a portfolio, you're submitting a portfolio that has a lot of different skill sets, which is good, but I mean, I think I would like to think that Kenny and it seems like we kind of specialize what we look for when we're hiring certain talents or certain people, which is kind of the opposite to how a lot of animation studios in the region kind of work, where they just kind of have this one person doing all of these different things. I mean, we kind of try to model what would happen in an international studio. You know, you're going to be doing animation, you're focused on animation. You're going to be doing color, you're doing color. You're doing environments, that's what you do. So I think one thing that I don't see a lot of people doing is that when they're creating their portfolios, they don't focus their portfolios. And I think that's a huge challenge that I've noticed, at least in terms of when we're doing portfolio reviews, is that sometimes portfolios are extremely unfocused. Or they may be applying for a job, let me say a background designer, right? They're applying for a background designer and they have no background designs in their portfolio, but there is character designs, there is animation that they would have done, there is all these other things, except the one thing that we're asking them to do. But I also know at the same time, it's like, you don't really get opportunity to do this one thing that you want to focus on, because it's a kind of a catch-22. How do I curate a portfolio for a job that I want if I'm not creating the work that I'm supposed to be curating a portfolio for? So it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of up to the individual freelancer artist or whatever to, like, yes, I exist in an environment that does not facilitate the type of work that I want to do, but that does not change the fact that I need to curate my portfolio for the jobs that I do actually want in the future.
You just said something about your studio trying to mimic the way things are done abroad in terms of specialization. Like one person for backgrounds, a few
Yeah,
people for animation, a few people for this,
yeah.
and few people for that. One of the latest projects I was on, um, it was a listening project. The Lovers League promotion. I think my favorite thing about that project was that I was able to arrange everyone on the project as if they were all specialists. Like we're not in the situation that we can be specialists all the time. But I said, you do backgrounds, you do animation, you do cleanup, you do compositing, you composite in this particular program to do these particular things. And I think like the results was pretty good, because not those things that I had them focus on or specialize in were also the things that they were most interested in. And if they had an opportunity to specialize their portfolio, it would be about the thing that I put them on. So I was really proud of that project for that reason, that everybody got to work on it as if they were in a foreign studio because they were specializing. So
I
yeah.
think that also helps too, because now they have a portfolio. Now they actually have something they can look back and say, all right, cool, this is these very specific thing that I did. So I can take that thing that I did and use it as a portfolio piece. So like, and again, I guess that's how I look at it. It's not necessarily like we're just copying international studios for copying them sakes, but it's also giving people opportunity. You want to focus on backgrounds, like you focus on backgrounds so that you can build up your portfolio in backgrounds, so that the next opportunity that does come, you can point to that and say, yes, I want this particular job in this industry. This is my portfolio to back that up. And to come back to Raj as well too, I think that's the reason why Raj got the job and was able to move up so fast, because his portfolio is very specific to storyboarding. Like his entire portfolio is just storyboarding. That's it. Nothing else. So when people see that, it's like, yeah, of course, like you could do the job because your portfolio just speaks to that and that alone. And again, like it comes back to just the whole idea that this idea that we have to do everything, and yes, we have to because it's just the environment that we're in. But it doesn't change the fact that your portfolio needs to be very heavily curated to the job that you're applying for.
Like you just have to ignore the reality that you're in and work for the reality that you want.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, like do the work. Nobody's saying that, but when you're presenting that portfolio, make sure you take out all the extraneous stuff. Just make sure to take off that. Even if you did everything on the project, if they just ask you for your character designs, submit character designs.
those are all. No, that's not all our questions. How do we contact you guys? Like, if you want to be contacted, do we just email you through your company website, or do we find you on Instagram? Do we link you on the Discord server? Like, how do we reach out to you?
You can find me at Kenya Matis pretty much everywhere, whether it's Twitter or Instagram, in terms of being contacted. And then, of course, by email if you want to. I would say that write me at listenme is the best email to get us at. That's right, WRITEMI at listenme, that is, .com. And in terms of having like more conversations along this line, especially for this event, I think that will be available afterward in the Discord, you know, groups to just kind of sit down and have like a fireside, if you will, on this channel. I think that for going forward, a lot of the projects that we're working on are going to require a lot more like specialized types of roles. And they may not be specifically like animation production, but like coordination, like being a line producer, basically for people who are very interested in project management, in corralling people, cat herding as I call it. They're the types of roles that the more production that you're on, you need a lot more of that kind of organization as well. Reach out to us, not just me, but I would assume to both of us as well. If you are sort of a structured thinker, but you have a craving to be a part of the creative process, and that would definitely be a huge help.
Yeah. I guess I think me personally, I'm everywhere online as that guy Ren. The reason for that thing is just because at a point in time, everybody was like, "You're that guy in animation, right? That guy." So I just kind of went with it. Apart from that, far creative, most social medias, and I think in terms of email, it's create at far creative. You can just send me an email and
Far
I'll
with two
always.
R's.
Yes, far with 2 R's.
Okay.
Be going far. But yeah, our website, our social media is fine, and yeah, I mean, I'm for this event, I'm definitely be in the chat to ask any questions, and definitely available afterwards to answer any questions, because I think coming back to that portfolio thing, that's my biggest gripe right now. It's just, yeah, there's a lot of talent. It's just you guys need to focus. Put on blinders and be like, this is the job I'm applying for. This is the only thing I'm going to show you guys.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for like carving out a few hours out of your super busy week, super busy lives to come and spend some time with us. Remember to swing by the Discord every now and then. Sometimes we have conversations that aren't necessarily all about art. They're just like about the history of stuff, or like society, and like just interesting conversations that everybody can have, but through the filter of like being an artist in the region. So come hang out with us sometime. You don't have to be an artist to come and talk to us. I'm gonna end this.
So it's an open invitation.
Yeah,
But
it's an open invitation.
I want to say one thing though, like I do actually mean it. Like you guys and this community, it's really inspiring, to be honest with you. To see everything that you guys have done, to see everything that you guys continue to do. To be honest with you, it's one of those things where like I'm always kind of in the back of my mind is like I wish Trinidad would like make a community like this. Like, but of course, I'm glad you
Actually,
guys are doing it simply
this
because like
is
it's
this is a regional. We're
it's
trying to make it regional. We just don't know anybody. Since it was a bunch of Jamaicans that started this, we only know Jamaicans. We're trying to reach some Bajans. We're trying to reach some St. Kitts, some St. Lucian people, some Trinis. Like there are a couple of Trinis in the chat. I don't want it to be that like they join a live stream and hear all the Jamaican accents, all the patois. Be like, oh, this isn't for us. We're really trying to make it regional. We just don't know anyone. So if you can
yeah it's
share, if you can
I,
share,
always I'm always sharing you guys because I mean I think just again like seeing it build and seeing how you guys approach it from the ground up as opposed to where it usually comes from like the top down kind of approach is usually some government agency or some jumper trying to, I guess as Kenya said, herd the cats while you guys are just the cats hanging out in the graveyard somewhere talking all this stuff like you guys are just chilling out cool whatever
yeah,
like while the government agencies are like we need to find the cats so you're just doing all your own thing somewhere else like that's honestly a lot better. And yeah, I'm always in awe of everything you guys are doing. So I will always be a supporter of you guys.
I have to give credit where credit is due. If the community hadn't asked for there to be a community, there would not be one. Anybody who knows me personally, I'd have just done a thing and that would have been it. But they asked for it to be done, and so it has been done, and it keeps going because they want to be here. So I guess there's value
I
in
want
that.
to say also I'm really very proud of you, Janelle. Like this is like super cool. I've always wanted you to take over the world, whether it's take over the studio or take over one aspect of this whole journey. I'm just really hoping that like people that we are great people and you're good people can just come and just take things over like just run this like it would be amazing and I see that you're doing that and seeing where it started from and seeing where it's growing to now as well gives me a lot of hope because one of the things or the gripes that you always had was mediocrity in the region is like one of your pain points and why don't we work together and I see that you're through your own way resolving that through a very needed space. So kudos to you and the team for jumping in and fulfilling this gap and I'm excited to see where it goes in the future. So congrats.
Thank you. All right. Let's see if I can stop.